Hello, everyone, and welcome to our presentation to the Cybersecurity 7910 Capstone Course Project. We are Team 8, and my name is Sam Cody. My fellow team members are Kent Dyer Jr., Johnny Coons, Larry Henderson, and Derek Ham.
All right, so the scenario for our project was that we are a team who offers cybersecurity consulting to small businesses, and we have been hired by a restaurant named Aquaba to help protect its web servers. Aquaba is a fake or a simulated Caribbean-inspired steakhouse with 3 locations and 60 total employees across all their stores. Additionally, there's 1 accountant, 1 owner, 2 human resource agents, and one web developer, which are located at the headquarters location. Our objectives for this project was to plan, design, and implement security measures on a simulated Aquaba server built into a supplied virtual machine owned by Kennesaw State University. Their next task was to exploit another team's virtual machine server using our skills that we've obtained in the cybersecurity program, which includes project management, risk management, information security policies, and penetration testing and defense. Lastly, we were tasked for conducting vulnerability and network assessments after our own provided server has been exploited by another team.
In our initial project methodology and planning, we have discussed our assigned tasks and roles. Sam Cody is the team leader, and he's responsible for team planning and cooperation, vulnerability testing, database management, technical planning, and phase reports. Derek Ham is responsible for information security policy, threat and vulnerability detection, and penetration testing. Kent Dyer Jr. is responsible for vulnerability exploitation, server configuration, and technical planning. Larry Henderson is responsible for the information security policy, vulnerability detection, software tools configuration, and Johnny Coons is responsible for vulnerability testing, technical and risk assessment planning, website security, and VM configuration.
Methodology and project planning. Microsoft Teams was the primary source of communication. Teams meeting happened every Monday and Thursday at 7 p.m. Microsoft SharePoint was utilized to share files, and the team leader has the ultimate say on tasks assigned.
All right, as a group, we decided that we were going to plan due dates for each phase of this project, which included the project plan, which is just putting together the major pieces and planning out the tasks assigned to each member, and also what we would do and what we wouldn't do moving forward in the different phases. Phase 1 revolved around risk management, the information security policy, and technical plan for latter phases, which helped us assess which systems in our server needed protected over others and what risk we were willing to take and what policies were in place for employees at Aquaba. Phase 2 was the actual implementation of those tools using the technical plan, so implementing certain defense mechanisms and network analysis penetration testing tools into our own virtual machine and testing those on our own server. Phase 3, which was due on December 6th, included the exploitation of another server and also the defense and forensic report of our own server after it's been exploited. And then the project presentation, which we're doing right now, and then a peer review evaluation of our team members on how we believe our team members did throughout the project. Some of the technologies that were supplied to us for this project was a server that included an Apache server, Maria database, a Red Hat Linux OS that we were able to go in using PuTTY, and Palo Alto Global VPN that KSU supplied to us. Also, the e-commerce website was WordPress, so we had access to the WordPress admin rights and the WordPress server. The assigned IP address that we were given by our instructor was 10.96.32.246. And this is the IP address that the other team later on in the project that will be discussed used to exploit our own virtual machine. So the first part of phase 1 of this project was to create an information security policy for employees and usage of technologies of Aquaba. The first major thing that we decided was that Aquaba internal Aquaba employees were the only people that could use Aquaba's internal internet networks, databases, systems, and other technologies. So no one other than employees could utilize them. Next was that we were going to offer public unprotected Wi-Fi access to customers and guests. However, when they log on, they must sign off on an electronic user agreement not to exploit our system or not to perform any copyright infringement or any kind of criminal or civil acts against the company. And then that network is also going to be separate from the internal network of Aquaba servers. Next was we allowed employees of Aquaba to bring and use their own devices, but certain restrictions apply. They cannot connect their own routers, switches, or wireless access points. They can only use the internal Ethernet or Wi-Fi that's given from the company. Next is user access, so of the internal servers and our websites. So we gave the most access to the web developer, manager, owner, accountant, and human resource agent to go into the server and adjust rights, adjust defense mechanisms, adjust whatever they need to do. All the other employees besides those people do not have the rights to log into the server or adjust any kind of server configurations. And some prohibited usage that we determined for our information security policy was no employee is allowed to use company-owned technologies for personal use. So they can't scroll on social media or use their own technologies or company-owned technologies to do anything other than company-related things. Next is they are not allowed to engage in criminal activity, harassment, view obscene or offensive material, or violate copyright laws. And lastly, they're restricted from disseminating or sharing any Aquaba-owned technology contents unless prior approval was given by their immediate supervisor.
In this technical plan, we collectively brainstorm in order to decide the best options for the tools we can use to monitor and secure our server. So with the tools, we discuss many different tools such as Snort, TCP dump, Wireshark, Zeek, and also different SIEM tools. We mentioned Elastic, Alien Vault, things of that nature that would help us monitor our server. And then we also touched on different configurations that would be great for security and hardening our systems, such as role-based access, as well as firewalls, different firewall configurations that we can use. And we also touched on what ports that we should have open and closed.
For our project risk assessment, we divided the objects into 3 different categories: the assets, the level of risk, and in the eventuality of an asset compromise, the level of damage it can cause to the business. The number of assets start from the physical server to the network, the website/WordPress, the Apache server, the Maria database, the Red Hat OS, as well as the people/employees. With the exception of the physical server, which runs on the Kennesaw server's physical location, all the other assets have moderate risk to high risk. With the exception of a few, all the other assets have either a high risk or a moderate risk. From our initial assessment, we noticed that all of these assets are liable to DOS, denial of service attacks, to distributed denial of service attacks, to malware, Trojan horses, brute force attacks, zero-day exploits, spoofing, DNS tunneling, IoT attacks, session hijacking, TCP, SYN flood attacks, botnets, waterhole attacks, to URL interpretation, to cross-site scripting attacks, to application layer attacks, to even the SQL injection to the database, as well as incorrect privileges assigned to each server, as well as the most liable would be the people/employees, because they are susceptible to social engineering, phishing, and man in the middle, eavesdropping, insider attacks, as well as identity theft.
All right, the major goal for phase two was to implement security tools to help defend against exploitations in our server, which will be talked about in later slides. But some of the tools that were implemented involve the Maria database, the Apache server, the WordPress site, and the Red Hat OS. And then some other tools that will be talked about next slide will for vulnerability analysis and penetration testing. There's Wireshark, IP Monitor, Flow Tool, GNS3, and Traceroute. These tools we chose because they were free, and two, they were easy to use in real time and also to collect historic data for our own network and to also look at the network analysis of the opposing team's virtual machine IP address. So we were able to use these tools to effectively see what was going on in the network and see the packets being sent back and forth depending on what ports that we implemented on our network analysis and penetration testing. So regarding network analysis tools that we used, here's a couple of screenshots. On the left is going to be IP Monitor, and then on the right will be Wireshark regarding penetration testing of our own IP address. So IP Monitor is ideal for small to medium-sized environments. It's free. They offer automated alerts and remediation options, and it's mainly chosen for its user-friendly interface, and it's compatible with most virtual machineware hosts and APIs. Wireshark is a very popular and free tool for real-time network analysis, and it runs on various different operating systems. And as you can see, it's very easy to look at, and you can kind of read the data very well, and it's in real time. So you're constantly getting packets of data coming into Wireshark when you have it open. Another one that's not shown here is Flow Tool Bundle, which is a comprehensive set of tools designed for testing and configuring flow traffic within a network, which provides valuable insight into bandwidth usage and traffic patterns. The next is Traceroute NG, which is an advanced network path analysis tool crucial for diagnosing network connectivity issues. Its pinpoint accuracy and identifying problems like packet loss or latency make it a very good tool for network troubleshooting. And last, which is the GNS3, which stands for Graphical Network Simulator 3. It's a virtual testing tool that enables users to create and simulate network configurations without the need for physical hardware. And it's versatile, widely used for training, learning, and testing various network scenarios. So those are the tools that we use for network analysis and the reasons behind it.
When configuring our database, we understood that the Maria database is a child subset of MySQL database, and therefore the MySQL language is perfectly compatible with MariaDB. The initial setup of the server was blank and had no pre-installed databases. For the purpose of this project, we created a database called Aquaba, which lines up with the name of the business. After the creation of the database, we created tables which would store all the business data, including the user-employee information, to the information as it pertains to the website. This led to the creation of the 9 tables called employee, job, user, website, home, about, location, menu, and bar. Employee, job, and user tables reflect sensitive business information, and the other tables is a mirror to the website data. While populating the tables with the information, the main tables that store the most critical information would be the employee, user, and job tables. We created user accounts based on the data in these tables. Because of the job/role an employee has in a business, they will be given different levels of privileges. Starting from the top, the order hierarchy of admin access to only select access are the owner, web developer, accountant, HR, and lastly, the average employee. Only the owner/admin account would have access to make any changes to the database, as well as grant privileges to other user accounts. And the web developer only has privileges to the web pages tables, and the HR user only has access to the employee and locations table. The accountant is in charge of managing the prices for items offered on the website and its cash flow. And lastly, the employee user only has basic select access to all tables and cannot modify any data. Also, after setting up the user accounts, we enabled TLS and SSL certificate for a database and retrieved an RSA key. And after implementing the certificate to the database, this enables secure access to the database through the RSA key alone at the transport layer security.
We started our server configurations by updating the operating system and all processes and software within it. This is to ensure that everything is running on its latest security patches, as well as removing any software or processes that are outdated, obsolete, that pose vulnerabilities or threats. This includes updating Red Hat OS from 8.4 to 8.8 and the Maria database from 10.6.4 to 10.6.15. After that, we configured user accounts for everyone that's involved at the main level of the company, which is including the boss, the accountant, human resources 1 and 2, and the web developer. Each user account has a unique password that's also complex by using alphanumeric characters, lower and capital cases, and a special character to make it really difficult against brute force attacks. And to assure accountability and restrict root access, the only one who has super user administrative privileges is the owner of the company. With the SSH configurations, we started by closing off port 22 as our default SSH port to ensure that an Nmap scan wouldn't easily identify that we were using SSH services. Instead, we defaulted to a custom port of 9940 to help reduce the chances of a network sweep. With these configurations, we denied root access to ensure that nobody can brute force and log in as the root user. The only way to use root on our server is if you are a user within the server with granted sudo access, which in our case would be the owner of the company. We limited the max authentication attempts to 3 to prevent any brute force in password attacks into our SSH server, as well as restricting and denying any passwordless authentication. From there, we also enabled a banner to help deter anyone who is trying to access our server, whether accidental or maliciously, to let them know that they are not authorized to use it unless they have been given permission. When we originally started configuring the database and server, we enabled the GUI interface to give us more customizable security features. But before the server went live, we decided to disable and block port 9090 to restrict any access into the server on the user interface, just to prevent any kind of SQL injection or brute force attack, as well as trying to attempt a root login. With that, we also installed and configured Fail to Ban as our internal detection system. This software was configured to be able to detect anybody logging into our account, whether they successfully logged in or attempted and failed. If they attempted and failed, their IP address was logged and they were banned from the account for 15 minutes. From our server, we enabled SSL and TLS protocols for our website. This is done to ensure any communications and connections are authenticated towards us and ensure preventing any kind of man-in-the-middle attack or eavesdropping of any communication that happens. With this, we disabled port 80 and enabled port 443 to give a secure HTTPS connection. In addition, we also enabled private keys, SSL logging, to ensure every communication is logged on our website services, as well as enabling and installing a certificate of authority just to ensure that our website is authenticated. With the TLS, we also upgraded to version 3 to have the latest security standards. We enabled sufficient logging to ensure that every action is accounted for and have sufficient logging information for audit purposes and forensics. With this, we gave an easily readable date structure, such as year, month, date, hour, minute, and seconds, so we can always know when or where an event has taken place. From this, we also installed the rsyslog to give us a good constant logging system, as well as log rotations, so we can enable and log and trace everything down.
firewall configuration was another important part of our server, our overall server configuration. We use the firewall D option, which is a built-in firewall that comes with the Red Hat Linux distribution. We were able to use this firewall to view our open and closed ports, make changes to our ports, as well as services. During the firewall configuration for the setup, we just went in and checked the version, made sure the firewall was enabled and running, and then set up the zones. So the zone that we have in our configuration was we set it in a public zone and for zero trust. This file shows an example of the Apache and WordPress configuration file. So what we did was make edits to the configuration file so that adversaries couldn't take advantage of the default configurations. In the default configurations, there are different directory attacks that can be taking place. So what we did was just go in and into the configuration file and made sure that those options were not available, so users are not able to go in and access any of the WP content upload. So we just took that directory off so it wouldn't be able to be accessed.
Phase 3 exploitation. One of the testing tools, IP Monitor, found several open-closed ports. Ports 22, 80, 139, 445, 3128, and 3306. Ports 22 and 139 could not successfully connect the monitor, which could indicate firewall parameters. Port 80 could connect to the monitor. As far as Wireshark, it showed the network traffic in real time with server port of 9090.
When exploiting the targeted VM database, we ran into some difficulties. We were unable to retrieve the username and password credentials for any accounts, but by using a Python command, I was able to deploy a SQL injection to bypass the username and password. This SQL injection allows the server to read a seemingly blank username and password on the surface to convince the server in gaining access. The downside of this method is the failed enumeration of the password, username and password, or official access to the database. Therefore, the only information I was able to retrieve was the current user account was named user, which is default user account available in MySQL databases. And we've learned that the TLS and SSL was enabled on the target VM database server. The technology is used for the specific database exploitation is a Python script that will be running in conjunction to Kali Linux that is running Metasploit. The reason for doing so is that MySQL and MariaDB databases have certain ports available for exploitation, i.e. port 3306 that uses Metasploit. The idea of the Python code is to first establish a connection to the database. This will try to enumerate the account credentials such as username, password, target database, and hostname. The code will also show the privileges associated to the account as notified as grants. If successful, then account enumeration will show the username, password, target database, and hostname. But unluckily, we were unsuccessful in our attempts. The second idea is to deploy a SQL injection as a trigger. This is accomplished by creating a temporary table with some data, and a table is then inserted into the database server as a trigger. Now, when the database is pinged and the trigger is enabled, then we would have had successful SQL injection. This was done using a shell command where we use a listener through port 6033, which is the listening port, also known as a reverse or opposite port of 3306. By using the listener, we can check if the trigger is enabled on the database server and is deployed, but this was also unsuccessful.
In our exploitation phase, we attempted to exploit port 22. We used Nmap to scan for open ports and services, and we noticed port 22 was open. So after detecting the secure shell was open, we attempted to use brute force to crack the passwords. As you can see over to the right, we use Metasploit. We set our options, so we had to go in and set up a word list as well as a username list for our brute force attacks. And as you can see on the right hand side as well, after a number of attempts, there was actually a loss of connection, so we were not able to successfully exploit Secure Shell. So while using Nmap, we also did detect that port 80 was open, so we attempted a HTTP exploitation. So we used Metasploit again, and we used our auxiliary HTTP version to get us information for the target IP. So while running this, we did get the Apache version as well as the Red Hat Linux version. That's the information that was given back to us. So then after that, we took that information and we did a directory scan to see if we could find any vulnerabilities in the directories of the target IP. So after doing that, we were only able to detect the home directory. So we didn't find anything that we were able to exploit here because everything that would have been vulnerable was not detected by the Metasploit.
At the end of the assignment, we pulled log files and analyzed and pulled together a forensic report to see if there has been any attacks or attempts to have breaking into our company server. The method of examination includes searching through log files within the var logs directory using the grep command to find keywords such as access, denied, approved, authorization, root, admin, and administrators. We use dates focusing between November 21st and December 3rd, and we also just pulled a manual analysis reading through the log files for any suspicious activities. From these reports, we can see that in our e-commerce site, we pulled all the traffic of any page that's been accessed, pulling all the resources at the time and date of when they were accessed, which this could show a reconnaissance period for the opponent, looking for vulnerabilities to exploit through our server and website. Below also shows the database access attempts that they've made, which shows that they've tried to just root at localhost using no password or brute force attacks. Luckily, with our configurations in the server, we were able to thwart and deny any attacks and attempts of access that wasn't by an authorized user. From the WordPress logs below, it shows an attempt to access our WordPress resources by use of the WP admin site on our IP address. But with our server configurations and WordPress configurations, we were able to thwart and deny any access that wasn't by our configurations or authorized users. Below also shows our SSH attempts that have been made. Using custom ports such as 58094 with brute force passwords, was able to deny any access of brute force or port hopping that may have been conducted.
In summary, we discovered several vulnerabilities, analyzed ports, and employed a combination of tools for a targeted evaluation. Key highlights include open ports, outdated software, and missing security headers in the web application. Despite unsuccessful attempts due to defenses, a strong firewall thwarted SQL injection on various web pages. In conclusion, our project emphasizes the importance of proactive security measures, and we maintained ethical guidelines and defined the project scope throughout.
So in conclusion, our team achieved significant milestones. We successfully planned, designed, and implemented strong security measures on Akwaba's web servers. Our team demonstrated technical and soft skills learned in the program by exploiting another team's VM and also defending our own virtual machine. Our methodology included Microsoft Teams, SharePoint, clear leadership, which ensured effective communication and collaboration between all involved members. The security implementation involved a comprehensive information security policy, technical plan execution, and deployment of various security tools that included network analysis and other software implementations built into the server. Through risk assessment, we identified vulnerabilities in different components, leading to successful and unsuccessful exploitation attempts, which were noted previously. Our database exploitation efforts emphasize the importance of TLS and SSL-enabled ports on our own system. In response, we've outlined key findings, recommendations, and a path forward, including timely software updates, security header implementation, and cybersecurity awareness training through Aquaba employees. Some challenges that were faced by our group was just making sure that deadlines were met and that we can designate time and effort to the specific tasks that were given to us. All team members contributed equally to the project, and overall it was a smooth process, and we were able to do the work as necessary. But that concludes our project and our presentation. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you very much for listening.